WordPress Accessibility Day 2023. Authoring Tool Accessibility Guidelines, going above and beyond Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. With speaker Helen Burge, Director, Digital Accessibility, Testlio. This presentation was recorded September 28th, 2023.
Hey, hello, and hello everyone. Welcome to WordPress Accessibility Day 2023. Again, probably for most of you, but I'm new. So my name is Joost de Valk. I'm a partner at Amelia Capital. I'm the CTO of Post Status and many other things, but much more importantly, I'm the MC for you for the next few hours. I'm really delighted to introduce our next speaker, Helen Burge, who will talk to us about authoring tool accessibility guidelines. Helen currently holds the position of Director of Digital Accessibility at Testlio, and she has a distinguished career since completing her university studies at Bournemouth University. She specializes in testing focusing on accessibility, and she has tirelessly advocated for enhanced user experiences. She has collaborated closely with developers. I'm a developer myself, so I really appreciate that when people actually do collaborate with developers to identify and address accessibility issues, like establishing best practices along the way. Helen has worked with multiple companies, ranging from DQ, AbilityNet, Tenon, just to name a few, leaving a lasting impact with her expertise in digital accessibility. Committed to lifelong learning, she continues to refine her skills and knowledge, always aiming to ensure an optimal experience for every user, regardless of their background. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Helen Burge. Take it away, Helen.
Thank you. I hope I live up to that introduction. Anyway, thank you for coming. This is a little bit on the audit side because we're talking about guidelines, and when it comes to WordPress, there's a bit more to just the web content accessibility guidelines. So I thought it would be good to give you an overview to authoring tool accessibility guidelines, or ATAG. And as you can tell, I do try to practice what I preach with accessibility by having the full term rather than abbreviation, because my title would be a lot shorter then. Anyway, what I intend to cover today is the history, the audience, as in who requires ATAG, where to start, a quick checklist of what you can use when checking what plugins you're going to use with your WordPress website or other tools, as it were. And then I'm going to go through part A, what's covered in part A of ATAG, and I do cover that a bit more through the slides. Part B, and then a summary. So I'm trying not to give too much away because I cover most of what this all means as I go through. Anyway, so for the history, we had ATAG published in 2015 after WCAG 2 was released, and it goes side by side as part of the Web Accessibility Initiative guidelines, because we have 3 items. We've got Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, we've got Authoring Tool Accessibility Guidelines, and User Agent Accessibility Guidelines. They all sort of intertwine, and both ATAG and I say UG rather than UAAG sometimes, but they both incorporate WCAG as part of their testing. They don't say we're all independent and repeat stuff. They reuse, and that's always great, isn't it, when we reuse each other's items. But they have additional checks. So authoring tools are things like WordPress, where it's allowing you to create something that you put online. Other tools can be, say, a word processor. I'm trying not to name any companies when I say these, or sometimes more complicated tools that you use to produce a website. And again, I'm trying not to mention Dreamweaver, because we all know that Sometimes the tools don't always make a good website if the author doesn't totally understand what they're doing. And that's why authoring tool accessibility guidelines were introduced, to help you choose the tool that will help you create something accessible. And user agent accessibility guidelines, that refers to things like browsers, what renders the content. We're not going to cover that too much today, but I wanted you to understand there's something out there. Some say it's no longer needed because when we get to WCAG 3, and yes, the WC is staying in, but it's going to be the W3C for the acronym rather than web content, because AG is going to be accessibility guidelines for all of these items, I believe. Anyway, that's still in the future. So for now, we have 3 different sets that are relevant according to what it is you're using. And yes, I did copy an image from the W3C, which is why I have credited it so that you know exactly where I got it from. Anyway, the audience for ATAG. If you can't make your website accessible, it can mean you exclude a lot of your potential audience. Never assume the needs of the audience when building a website. So the audience of ATAG is designed for users that create content for the web. And I do hope a lot of you are aware of these already, but if not, then this is a great starting point. And as I said already, it's used with WCAG if it's web-based. If you've got something that is an application that doesn't need to go online, then WCAG is not relevant. But you still have to make sure that's accessible too. And it's split into 2 parts. Part A is the tool itself accessible. If I'm using, say, a screen reader, do I understand the parts of the tool, like is that button labeled as a button? Part B, that's more relevant to this talk, in the fact that when you're choosing the tool, does it let you create accessible content? And the reason why these are both important is because you want to use plugins that don't block you from making your content accessible. If you've got something that doesn't let you put alt tags onto images, how's that going to make your life easier? Are you going to add a caption underneath it in the hope that that will be used, or is it going to use AI and auto-generate alternative text that will mean nothing to the user? So it's really important to make sure that if you're choosing a plugin to build your site, that you are going to be allowed to be the author of the content and don't let someone else make the decisions for you. Because as we all know, when it comes to accessibility, there's no one size fits all. And we all have like moments. I always call it moments because I have a lot of them, like haven't had enough coffee today, haven't had enough sleep today. They kind of go hand in hand, really. Or not wearing my glasses, or my toddler is pulling at my arm so I can't type with one hand. There's all moments where I need content to be more accessible. So this is why, as we all know, it's important we make sure what we make is going to make sure no one's blocked by what we deliver. So where to start? I found this image and I was like, that was me trying to write this talk. So I was doing some research for this talk about WordPress accessibility plugins. And I'll share a bit of my findings after this. But when we start, do you author the content? If you don't, then ATAG might not be as relevant to you. But do you author content, or do you have a WordPress site that you get content authored for you? That's also something to be aware of. Make sure that whatever plugins you're using are going to be meeting ATAG. Oh yes, are you in charge of selecting the plugins? That's always important. If not, you can always highlight to the person that is in charge of selecting the plugins any findings you have with the ones that you use. And do you test them to check they allow you to add accessible content? I've already mentioned the most obvious one, alternative text. But there's other ones too, like link text, or adding descriptions or hints to items that might not be intuitive. There's so many variations. And do they guide you? Do they say, do they tell you they've done the work for you? Or do they highlight what might need fixing and help you? And do you believe the ones that claim they do the work for you? Because I'm going to share with you now this website. When I was looking into this, I was looking into WordPress accessibility plugins. And I went through this site. I was very excited. I was like, oh, there's like lots of articles. And I went through this and I started to go through. And then I started noticing the authors like UserWay, Accessibility. There's a lot of plugins that claim to do the work for you. What they're doing is, so yeah, this article annoyed me quite a bit, because they're like, oh, I've got a plugin here and it will fix it for you. And they don't actually help you make the choices of what changes are made. It just overlays it. And we all know accessibility overlays are snake oil. They promise to fix things, but they don't actually, and they can be frustrating to users. I was looking at a website the other day. I was ordering some bits for my son who has autism, some light toys, because he's fascinated by lights. And they had an accessibility plugin over the top of it, and it was on my mobile, and it was blocking my view for part of the site because it just wouldn't go, you couldn't dismiss it. And I was like, how's that actually making my life easier? I don't need it, I don't want it. Go away. And I did email them, I didn't get a response, just saying, please take it away, it's not going to work. So yes, it does look like, even though that article does recommend Joe Dolson's plugin that actually looks at the themes and fixes them to make them accessible when you start, be careful of what they promise. If they do the hard work for you, you might end up with something that is going to frustrate and annoy your audience. So when it comes to choosing plugins, go for reputable ones, and also make sure that they allow you to make changes, that they don't take the control from you. And I would like it, I think you've shared the links, haven't you? So there's also a lovely overlay fact sheet that Carl Groves wrote and collaborated on. And I have signed that. I think a lot of us probably have. I recommend, if you haven't, to sign it, because overlays are just... Anyway, that was my little soapbox moment. I apologize there. And yes, that was my frustration there, that this person's showing the hands on the head, looking at their screen when I was looking into these plugins and finding this article. So yes, anyway, so when it comes to part B, which is when you're trying to choose the plugin that's right for you, there's a quick checklist. So is there an accessibility checker? I always use that. I use it on my slides. And it's quite clever these days, because it will notice if alternative text has been generated, and it will say, are you sure you want this one? Which is good, because sometimes when you look at what is generated, it's nothing like the image itself. And oh yes, I forgot to say, there's an image of a laptop with a WordPress site on it. I was quite chuffed. I found an image of a WordPress site. Can you tell I did have a site once, but I don't anymore, so I apologize there. Anyway, so is there an accessibility checker? Is there something that will check my content and flag anything that is maybe needs fixing, like color contrast? Or is there something that doesn't have an alternative text? Or, you know, it's always nice to have one. If it doesn't have one, it's not the end of the world, but it's a good to have. What guidance is available? Like we all know, WordPress has a great community for accessibility. So there's a lot of guidance out there. You can go to the Slack forum, you can go to the forum itself and ask questions, and you'll get someone lovely helping you to fix any accessibility issues. So that's why I would recommend WordPress. Not just because they wanted me to speak, but because they actually are advocating what they preach. So yes, what guidance is available? That also can just be a help file. Like if I want to know how to do something, if I can't easily find the answer, that's a no-no. I want to know how to do things myself. And if I can't find the answers easily and it's not intuitive, it's something to avoid then. And yes, I keep mentioning it, can alternative text be added to an image? I did have experience with an authoring tool where it had a banner image and you were not allowed to add any alternative text. And people kept putting a lot of meaningful images in there with no description. And I said the only way to work around it, because I didn't have the choice, I wasn't allowed to choose the plugins or the tool that we were using. So what I was doing was adding a caption to the image, because it was the only thing I could think of that would give a text alternative to the image. It was a hack. It wasn't pretty. And I do think when it comes to these hacks, they're a well-meaning way around things, but they shouldn't be needed. Are links styled using more than color alone? This is another one that sometimes a bold link is not enough for me. I prefer to have an underline. I'm old school. If I see a change of color and an underline, I know it's a link. But bold text is a slight differentiator. But yes, if they style the links and you can't change the format to suit your preferences and to make it easy for the users to understand, that's another one to be aware of. Can the keyboard focus all actionable items? Yes. Do they have dividers where they add in items for you? Again, going back to the snake oil people. If they add in lots of divs or nested divs, can be done due to JavaScript being injected in, when using React kind of frameworks where they embed divs into links. That means that the list items are no longer recognized by the screen reader. But it can also make things like buttons not be a button, so the keyboard can't focus it. And also another one to add to that, if it's focused, can I see the focus? So is it focusable and can I see the focus? That's a good one to be checking. And if you copy accessible content in, like if you find an image with a brilliant alternative text and I copy and paste it, does the alternative text get moved over too? Or do I have to copy and paste the alternative text into my image after I've copied and pasted it? I know that sounds like something that's a minor thing, but if you're doing large amounts of content creation, that can be an RSI, sort of a repetitive strain injury sort of incident. So that is for your ease of not having to do an extra step to get the accessibility embedded. So part A. Part A of ATAG is the tool itself accessible to use? So this is important if, as part of your content creation team, you've got anyone that might rely on assistive technology or use assistive technology on a daily basis. So, I always judge it. Could I understand this if I haven't had my coffee? But for part A, we have A1. The authoring tool user interface follows applicable accessibility guidelines. In other words, if it's web-based, does it follow WCAG? Does it meet the WCAG checkpoints? Yes or no? That one is the largest part of an ATAG audit, is making sure that WCAG is covered. But it also applies, it has a section for non-web-based functionality. So if you have an application, it's the similar principles of WCAG, but it is a standalone application. So it's not HTML-based. basically. It's making sure our buttons announce as buttons when you focus them. Do they interact with the keyboard? Same sort of thing. If I'm using a tool, can I use it using a screen reader? Can I use it with the keyboard alone? Can I zoom in? Can I change the colors? Are the colors easy to see in the first place? Am I allowed to change? You know, those are all things that should be part of checking if it's accessible. Then again, editing views, are they perceivable? So if I'm editing content, am I able to get into all the different items? Do I understand what I'm putting in where? So you need to make sure that there is alternative content available to authors as needed. For instance, if it's a drag and drop, can the keyboard do it? And just needs to be programmatically determined. And then, are they operable? So, you know, you've got Paul coming in here. So editing views, are they operable? Can I use a keyboard? Do I have to use a mouse? Can I use another tool to edit items in the editing view? And are they understandable? Again, is the language simple? And does it make sense with the roles assigned and so on? Because they don't have robust, because basically when it comes to editing views, and we have ATAG at a glance, which I think is a very good starting point for anyone when it comes to these guidelines. But we don't have robust, because robust is for content you are creating yourself. This is more about checking the tool is doing as it needs to. And as we all know, 4.1.1, due to that errata, is no longer tested. Yay! Well, no longer deemed worthwhile to be tested, I should say. But still, I'm excited. 4.1.1 was always a bit of a long-winded with very low severity issues type of checkpoint. So anyway, but robust is not there because these are things that are covered partly by WCAG, and the editing views, you're not checking that they've been built correctly. You're just making sure that the user has no issues with interacting with them. Anyway, part B. This is the bit that's most important for when you choose a plugin, is making sure it supports you in being able to produce accessible content. So we have part B of B1, fully automatic processes produce accessible content. This is not doing the job for you, people. It's not the overlay thing. It's more about, does it have a wizard that identifies where you need to change things? Does it flag things going, oh my word, you can't publish this, you haven't added an alt tag? I mean, I'm not saying it should have an alarm like that, but it'd be kind of cool if it did, because I know I personally sometimes forget, or I get a bit rushed off. And it would be really nice if there was a warning that sometimes it needs to be checked. I know that like on Word, it will have a little icon at the bottom to let me know that there's issues with the accessibility. So is there something that will help do some of the grunt work, I call it, checking everything for you to make sure that it doesn't do all the work, because it doesn't make sure that, say, the alternative text is meaningful. It's more about checking, are the programmatic items there, yes or no? And B2, to complement B1, as I said before, it needs to have processes to help you produce content, but B2 is, are authors supported in making accessible content? It's not doing it for you, it's supporting. So it's making sure that it gives you guides. It will assist you with templates that are accessible. And I know WordPress, again, has a lot of accessible content templates. Don't always believe it just because it says it is. I always recommend quickly checking them out, because as we all know, I could say that I was German, for instance, but with my accent, you might be like, I'm not sure you're telling the truth, Helen. So just because I say something doesn't make it true. So just because something says it's accessible doesn't mean it might be 100%. So yes, it's great that they produce accessible content and templates, but it also, you need to make sure that you can change the templates to suit your needs and to suit your audience's needs as needed. And also, will they help authors with accessible pre-authored content? Again, that's helping with making sure that if you are a little bit non-techie, some of this will seem a little bit much to start off with. So I recommend, if you've got a great support community that will help, that makes a massive difference to helping create accessible content. And yes, our authors supported improving accessibility. So again, it's a bit like the wizard part of it again. It's also making sure, when I say a wizard, it's not the paperclip, but pretty much like. And it's basically, sometimes when I'm going through the accessibility options, I might not be able to get to the reordering of content. You know, like on slides, often, sometimes it goes forward, sometimes it goes backwards with the readability. It all depends on what my first slide did. And then I get an option to click to go to the reorder option, because I never find it easily in the menu options. And it's nice that it gives you that quick jump to the tool you need to be able to fix the items. So when I talk about a wizard, it's something that does a few shortcuts for you for what you obviously need help with. And I call them wizards because it's a dark art sometimes reading my mind, but it seems to manage quite well. So it must be magical. Anyway, so do they assist authors in checking for accessibility problems? Again, an accessibility check. And do they help with the repairs? And do they promote and integrate their accessibility features? In other words, do you have to search for it? Do you have to really look for how to do something, or does it try to do it for you and then tell you it's done? I'm not trying to tell everyone not to use certain tools at all, but you'll notice that there is a hidden agenda to this talk, slightly, just a bit. Anyway, but make sure that the authoring tools promote and integrate their accessibility features, but they let you know what they're doing, and you can change it if you need to. And again, ATAG at a glance. So anyway, so when authoring content, you need to make it accessible. That's a given. You've come to this day of talks where you've had lots of people passionate, telling you lots of hints and tips, and me with my little soapbox saying, don't use the overlays because they're naughty. But you need to make sure it's accessible. It's on you. No one else can take that from you. You can have someone audit it and tell you what to do, but it's you. You are the one creating the content. So it's quite a big responsibility, because then you get less sarcasm from me, if I happen to know you. Anyway, ATAG helps because it helps you work out what to focus on. It's got some guidelines. Some can be slightly misinterpreted, like with the automatic processes, but it does let you know what you need to focus on. Can I make the changes? Am I helped? It's not about leaving you to try and work out what to do on your own. And it's often best used with this checklist before doing any WCAG testing that's done on your website, because if you are aware of how to fix items and you have gone through it, if you've done the ATAG part of making sure your plugins let you change items, then when you come to do a check on your website that you've authored, I'm assuming it's a website, might be a document or whatever, but if you've done the ATAG part and made sure you've applied all these items to the content you're authoring, then when you come to doing an audit, the items found will be the edge cases and not the, oh no, another alt tag of logo when it's not even a logo. And if the plugins or themes do not allow you to create accessible content, others are available. A bit like search engines, there's always others available. And if there isn't one that suits your needs, ask the community, because I'm sure that they will be able to advise you on what they recommend, including Joe, who might have authored one himself. Anyway, questions?
We do have a question lined up, and I actually have some questions too. So let's start with a question from Johan in sales. I'm assuming he's Dutch. I'm not butchering his name. Does AI or machine learning, can it now do accessibility for us? Will we get to that point?
Oh.
If you stop screen sharing, we can see you a bit better.
Oh, are you sure you want to? I don't know.
Yes, I'm sure.
But anyway, AI, I do think I should chat to Chris Land about that one. But when it comes to AI, it's getting there, but it's only as clever as the people that program it. I know that when Facebook first introduced AI for images, I'd post a photo of my son with a knight's helmet on, and the alternative text it computed would be person indoors, maybe wearing shoes. And I'm like, hang on, there's a helmet, what? And I do find that when it comes to AI, it can be incredibly intelligent, but it's gaining its knowledge from what we're telling it. So if we're not putting meaningful alternative text when it gets it wrong, it's not going to be able to learn. So obviously, I'm always correcting AI because my son is always wearing shoes. Well, sometimes he doesn't. Oh dear. Yes. But anyway, but the maybe wearing shoes did get me, because I did wonder, like, how much is the AI being trained by people obsessed with shoes? Who knows? But when using alternative text, I do think when we amend it and when there's AIs involved, I know that Facebook quite often will sell my data back to whatever machines are learning in the background, because we all know they're there to make money. You get something for free, so they've got to make money out of you somehow. I sound so dark there, but anyway, when it comes to AI, yes, it could do accessibility for you to a point. And this is where we have to be able to edit it ourselves. This is why I find the overlays dangerous, because they are using a form of AI where they inject JavaScript into your site and sometimes make it less accessible in the first place because of what they've added in. And they make it that you don't edit it yourself. So how is that helping anyone? How are they learning from the mistakes they make? True AI will make suggestions and then learn from the feedback you give. I know that from, because Christopher Land does do a lot of talks on AI, and he's very entertaining with them. And one of the things I've noticed is when he's talking about it, he does examples of DALL-E, where they do the art from suggestions. And there's a point of, if everyone tells Dolly, I forget now, but anyway,
Dolly,
never quote me on names. Dolly. I'm thinking of Dolly the sheep now, aren't I? Yes, anyway, but if everyone told Dolly that a car was a plane, when it had to do artwork of a car and it shows a plane, it's not wrong. It's just going by what it's been told. So if we're not telling the AI, or we're not nurturing, I know someone was saying to me once that AI is like a toddler. And as I have a toddler, I know how it goes. You have to nurture them so that they learn right from wrong. But you also have to put up with a lot of temper tantrums and messes along the way. It's a learning process for everyone. And if we don't teach AI, hopefully that human life is worth saving, just putting it out there. But if we don't teach AI empathy and understanding, how will it do accessibility well? So it's not there yet, but I do believe it will get there if, but only if, we help teach a bit to them. And yes, Johan, it's fun, isn't it, having children that don't like sleeping certain times?
I couldn't tell. I've got 4 kids who are luckily now all slightly older than toddler age, so I can actually sleep.
Oh no, then you stay up wondering where they are if they don't come home on time.
Oh yeah, don't get me started.
Yeah. Anyway.
I see a question from Joe by way of Estella. Can you provide a concrete example of automated content? What's a practical scenario people might encounter where automated content is being created?
Okay. If you use Word and you paste in an image, it will generate alternative text, and it has a sentence underneath it saying auto-generated content, and then that gets flagged in Accessibility Checker because that's a phrase it looks for to make sure that you've checked that the alternative text is valid. That's great because it not only tells you what it does, that it's done the automatic alternative text, but it also it's trying. So those are the automated content that's been created. And like Facebook, again, it does say might be. It never says it definitely is. It will say it could be this because it knows it might be wrong. But not everyone will know that something has been automated because not all tools will do that in a easy to spot way. So if you've got a tool that generates alternative text that you haven't created, it wasn't from the original source file, and it's incorrect, then it's going to make you look a bit of a Irish term here, Egypt, for not having the right term in your alternative text. So that's something that I recommend checking in your plugins. If it does do AI sides of things, does it make it easy for you to spot that it's done it?
Clear. So for everyone listening and viewing, there's a Q&A button in the lower part of your Zoom screen where you can add your questions. We have one more question from Gina Sheldrake. She asks, as plugins go or themes, is there any resources out there to help assist in helping us understand who is real and who is not in their accessible plugins and themes? Now, I do know from the chat, sorry to answer this on your behalf, Helen, but I do know from the chat that Joe Dawson just shared a link to the WordPress accessibility team's list of plugins that they have that help you to actually improve your site that are not overlays like the ones that Helen was so kindly addressing. But yeah, so there is a list, but is there any other things that you would like to add to that, Helen? Are there resources that you would go to?
Ask the community as a first point, and also check the company that makes it, because I instantly knew when I see Accessibility or I'm just looking at the list now that I've got open here. Yeah, so when you go through the list and you see a company name that you know is an overlay provider like Userway, that tells me don't use it. It's going to enforce what it thinks should be done or is programmed should be done. I should never blame the actual tool itself because, you know, it's only as good as the program that makes it, and it's best intentions, but yeah, anyway. But also when I go through the descriptions, if I see something like it's paid for, it will change items for you. You don't have to do any of the work yourself. That instantly, that's the snake oil bit. That's a bit that everyone goes for because it's telling you exactly the easy route. If it's too easy, then you're not able to change it yourself, and then that means you can be producing complete insert read word there, rather than something that's going to help your audience.
Yeah, if it sounds too good to read through, It often is, as Jonathan already said in the chat. But I think if you're looking for the resources, you've come to the right place. I mean, you're here listening to this, join the WordPress Accessibility Day Slack. You'll find tons of people willing to help you find the right plugins and resources for all of these things. Now, I have a question myself, Helen. How much extra work is it to add an ATAG check to your accessibility audit? And where would you put it in the process?
As it incorporates WCAG, I often, if it's just for me and my personal use, I do part B on the items I'm using to make sure that if I'm producing content, that I'm able to not be blocked. It's like when I get enforced, the company says I have to use this product, and then I can't create graphs for my reports that are accessible. It's so frustrating. And it's that sort of thing, making sure that I can do what I need to do without getting frustrated. So that doesn't take a lot, and that's just a common sense kind of thing. But when it comes to audits itself, it doesn't take a lot extra from the WCAG, because you quite often, from doing the web content accessibility guideline checks, you will notice the alternative text, you'll notice the keyboard accessibility and so on, because that's part of it there. But remember, if you're using an application, it's not going to be like for like with websites where you've got the same keyboard shortcuts. So one thing I recommend when it comes to ATAG is making sure that it is an authoring tool first off. If it's not an authoring tool, you're not creating content. It's really easy, don't do it at all. But when it comes to creating content, it's important on a personal and on an audit way, because it does extras. It's like it's looking at the support, it's looking at the help, and that doesn't take too long at all. If it takes you a long time to do that part, it's not accessible. That's always a big giveaway. So yeah, sorry, a long-winded answer there.
Not a problem. So you were alluring to it a bit already, but how do I know if I need to check for ATAG guidelines?
When it frustrates you. No, when you're trying to create content. If it's something that's rendering your content, then that's user agent accessibility guidelines. I know that when I first started doing mobile testing, everyone's like, oh, WC, it doesn't count. It's like, well, actually it does, because your mobile app is the user agent that's rendering the content. So it's still available online, but it's not in the recognized browser. So yes, it's not always one size fits all, but understanding that you're on the developer side, you're the creator, and the tools you need ATAG.
Perfect. Well, with that, we've come to the end of our list of questions, and with that also the end of this session. So thank you all for attending. Thank you, Helen, for your excellent presentation. You can continue the conversation in chat or on social media using the hashtags, and these are extremely hard to pronounce. I don't know why they do that. WPA11Y Day is like, how do I pronounce that? WordPress Accessibility Day. Okay, I understand that, but that's the hashtag. Or WPAD 2023. We also really appreciate it if you go to 2023.wpaccessibilityday.day/feedback to provide anonymous feedback for our speakers on their presentation so that they can improve them for the next time. And while you're there, you can also enter to win a t-shirt. Stay tuned for the next session at the top of the hour, 10 a.m. UTC. We'll be talking about accessibility pitfalls of WordPress menus with Dana Pulsifer. While you're waiting for that, don't forget to visit our sponsors pages to grab some virtual swag, enter for a chance to win some great prizes, and see you right after the break. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for coming. Yay. Oh, and if you're an overlay company, I do not want feedback. Just saying.
Thank you to WordPress Accessibility Day 2023 sponsors. Platinum sponsor, Equalize Digital. Equalize Digital's Accessibility Checker plugin is an automated accessibility scanning tool that helps WordPress websites become and stay accessible. Platinum sponsor, Gravity Forms. Gravity Forms is the professional form builder that you need to create beautiful, powerful, and accessible forms. Gold sponsors: 20i, DQ, Empire Caption Solutions, Pressable, and WP Engine. Silver sponsors: Code Geek, Drake Cooper, GoDaddy, Lone Rock Point, NerdPress, Overnight Website by Kinetic Iris, Riola Networks, A11Y Collective, and The Blogsmith. Bronze sponsors: Accessicart, Green Geeks Web Hosting, Hall Analysis SEO Consulting, HDC, ITX, IvyCat, MetaBox, Pixel Chefs, Simply Schedule Appointments, SiteGround, Termageddon, Underrepresented in Tech, Weglot, and Yoast.